Okay, so the other special right triangle is 30, 60, 90. 30, 60, 90 right triangles are come from equilateral triangles. Equilateral triangles have 3 congruent sides. They're equal angular, meaning they all have the same side. They all have the same angles, 60 degrees. And when I cut them in half, like I'm going to do right now, they make 2 scalene triangles. Scalene triangle is a triangle, or triangles that have different sides. All 3 sides are different lengths. And then when I do that, it's going to make 2 30, 60, 90s. So you see this is 60, those stay 60. This becomes 90, and that becomes 90. And then this here becomes each have 30. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to focus on one of them. So I'm going to draw one of them. So we're going to draw the triangle, and then we're going to figure out what we know so far. So we know that's a 90. Okay. We know this is a 60. We know this is a 30. It has to be a 30 because 60, 90 has to be 30 left to make 180. And then we know this side has to be 2. Okay, so if you look here, this side here, there's nothing, it's 2 from edge to edge up here. From the big triangle, its edge to edge is 2. Well, the angle got cut in half up here. So if the angle got cut in half, the angle that produces the side got cut in half, that means the length also got cut in half. So that means this has to be 1. So now what they want us to do is find the altitude. So the altitude is just a fancy word for height, the length of the height. How tall is this triangle, which is right here. Okay, well, anytime we need to find the side length of a right triangle, we're going to use Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, so A and B, remember, are the legs. The legs are the sides that make up the right angle. Doesn't matter which one is A and which one is B. Those don't matter. Those are interchangeable. So we'll say 1 is A. We'll say the question mark here is B. The only thing that has to be is that C has to be the hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is 2. Okay, so let's finish out. Let's solve for B. 1 squared is 1 plus b squared equals 4. Subtract 1 from both sides. B squared equals 3. Square root, b equals the square root of 3. Okay, again, from now on we're not changing that to a decimal. We are leaving it as a square root. Square root of 3, if I put it in my calculator, it's going to give me a decimal like 1.7 something. I don't care, I'm leaving it. I'm leaving it square root of 3. I'm not going to approximate anymore. Okay? What you notice is that it's scaling. This triangle is scaling. It's got a side of 1. It's got a side of square root of 3, which is about 1.7. And it's got a side of 2. Okay, so they're all close, but they're different sizes. Okay, that's because they have all different angles. 90, 30, 60. Okay, so we're going to use that to answer a few questions over here. So the first thing, if you notice, so let's go back 1 second. This is the short side. This is the shortest side. How do I know that? Because it's opposite the shortest angle. This is obviously the long side because it's opposite the biggest angle. And this is the middle side because it's opposite the middle angle. Okay? So if you notice, there's a relationship here. There's a relationship between the smallest side and the hypotenuse. This is half or double this times 2, right? So that's what this says here. If I find the shortest side, double it, that'll give me the hypotenuse. Okay? And then let's go back. This is 1. If I multiply times the square root of 3, I will get the medium side, or the biggest leg opposite 60, which is the square root of 3. That's where this comes from here. Okay? So if I know the smallest side, I double it to make the hypotenuse. I multiply times the square root of 3 to make the longer leg. Okay, so let's look at number 1. So we got to figure out what we know and what do we need to figure out. Okay, so we got 60 down there, so that means this has to be 30. This has to be 90. Okay, they told us. Okay, so 4 square root 2. 4 times the square root of 2. Is that the shorter? It's obviously a leg, but is it the shortest leg or is it the longer leg? Well, what is it opposite? It's opposite 30. So if it's opposite of 30, it's the shorter leg. Okay, so all I got to do is double it to get to the hypotenuse. So 4 times the square root of 2 times 2. So 4 times 2 makes 8 square root 2. Okay. Now, how about the longer leg? I know it's the longer leg because it's opposite of 60. Okay. Well, to figure out what that is, I'm going to multiply the shorter leg by the square root of 2. So to come here, I'm going to go, let me get some scratch paper here. I'm going to go 4 times the square root of 2 times the square root of 3. Well, since they both have roots, I can multiply and you get 4 times the square root of 6. Okay. Number 2. Okay, so we have 60. That means this has to be 30. And then we have 7. Well, again, it is opposite the shortest angle, so it has to be the shortest leg. Okay, so that means double to make the hypotenuse, multiply times the square root of 3 to make the longer leg. Okay, number 3 and number 4 now. Number 3. Okay, so this is 60. Now they give us the hypotenuse. Well, the hypotenuse, we know that the shorter leg is half of the hypotenuse. Shorter leg, that means that has to be 10. And we know that the shorter leg times the square root of 3 is the longer leg. Done. Okay, so now the last one. So again, we know the longer leg. They only give us the longer leg. That's all they give us in terms of side lengths. So they gave us this guy here. Well, we've been going from this guy to this guy. Multiply times the square root of 3. Well, now if we need to go backwards, we're going to divide by the square root of 3. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take 12 and divide it by the square root of 3. Okay. Well, again, can't have a square root on the bottom. So we rationalize, multiply by whatever's making the trouble, whatever's making the issue, which is the square root of 3. So I have 12 root 3. Square root of 3 times the square root of 3 makes the square root of 9, which is 3. These simplify. So you get your answer as 4 times the square root of 3. Okay, so that's going to be the shorter side. The shorter side is right here. Now if I double that, that's the hypotenuse, which is all that's left. So I got 4 times the square root of 3 times 2. 4 times 2 is 8, root 3. Okay. So just remember, what side are they giving you? If they're giving you the short side, times the square root of 3 makes the long leg, double it makes the hypotenuse. Okay.